also tell you that the Bible calls this the revelation of Jesus Christ. You know what a revelation is? It's a revealing. It's not a concealment. It's not a hiding of certain things. Well, then why don't I understand it? One of two or three things. Either number one, it ain't time for me to understand it, or it ain't given to me to understand all of it, or it ain't given to any one person to understand all of it, to have all the pieces of the puzzle. Or I'm too lazy to study all the symbols and everything because I believe they're all contained within the Scriptures. You find every bit of it already explained in Scripture somewhere. So two or three things I don't know, but here's one thing I want to call to your attention. I've done this before, don't read it, but it starts out and it calls it the revelation of Jesus Christ. Some of our Bibles used to say the revelation of St. John the Divine. John wasn't any more divine than I am. That may sound like blasphemy to some people, but it's the truth. It was called the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to give to his servants and show them things which must happen shortly, take place here before long. The time is near for these to be fulfilled. Don't turn to it, but in chapter 4, after the churches were addressed, John said, I heard a voice, a door open in heaven, and a voice said, come up here, and I'll show you things that have to be hereafter. Things that will take place short. In other words, from the time when he wrote this book, what he saw was future events. From that time, I can't take any of it and put it back here well, he just went back and showed what happened back here and all like that. I don't think so, because the Bible makes it clear in 3 different places that I can show you that what he saw, and from the time of that writing, the things that he saw was future events that would transpire. So that's my contention. Unless somebody can, and I'm not saying, when I say prove to me I'm wrong, I'm not, come on, prove to me I'm wrong. Show me. I'm open. It's like if you can show me where that line of thought or line of reasoning is wrong, I will listen to you and to anybody. But I think you can safely conclude that once he addressed the churches, Jesus Christ said this. He said, I'm going to show you things that are and things that will be. And so, and then he heard the trumpet calling him up into heaven, and said, write these things. And he said, I'll show you things that's going to be hereafter, or future tense. So chapter 12 to me is not a rehashing out of something that took place. For number one, I'm not going to read all this, just a couple verses, but it starts out, he sees a great wonder in heaven. There's a woman, she's clothed with the sun. I'm not even going to talk about who I think the identity. People have thought, well, I think it's Israel, I think it's the church, I think it's this, I think it's that. I think it's a woman, and she's symbolic, and she's getting ready to have a child. She's travailing in birth. She's pregnant, and the time of her birth is coming. Now people have said, well, that was Israel, and it had given birth to Jesus. But if you'll read on, the man forth was caught up to the throne of God unharmed. Jesus didn't get caught up to the throne of God unharmed. He was delivered out of Herod's attempt to kill him, but he went through his ministry. He was beaten and suffered and everything else and killed. And then then he rose, then he was ascended up. But when he left, it wasn't, hurry up and get me out of here, that dragon, he's going to get me if you don't get me out of here. No, Jesus wasn't scared of no dragons. When he rose triumphant, victorious over the grave, there was not an enemy what wasn't under his feet. He was not sitting there hurrying up wanting to get out of here so a dragon wouldn't get him. So it don't fit. This is somebody else as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, that doesn't matter. It goes on down, and there's a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fight against it, and the devil prevails not. He is thrown out of heaven. Most folks go back, well, that's when he was thrown out back into. Only one problem. He's thrown down to the earth. He's not given access to heaven. And you find Satan right there before the sons of God in the book of Job talking with God, still there going to heaven, the accuser of the brethren accusing us. So those are things that don't fit to me. But be that as it may, let me look to this one one verse here. We'll just start reading at verse 10. I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is what? Cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens. Be glad. This critter is gone. His blasphemous accusations has ended. We now declare the kingdoms of our God and the power of his Christ. We're declaring it has come in full power, and wonderful, glorious day this is. Because this accuser of the brethren, this slanderer, this deceiver, he is now cast totally out. We don't have to bear his mug anymore. We don't have to listen to his lies anymore. He is done here. He's not here no more. He's gone. Where'd he go? Down to the earth. And he says, rejoice, you heaven. Then woe. What does that word woe mean? I'll tell you. I looked it up in a dictionary. It means extreme grief and sorrow. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having what? Great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Now hear me. Do I believe God is in charge? Absolutely. Do I believe God does things? Absolutely. But I'm going to tell you what God will do. He'll let the devil do certain things that's playing right. For example, Satan filled the hearts of men and women with rage. Kill him. Crucify him. They were full of hatred. He entered the heart of Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus. There were men who were in meetings before that trying to surmise a way how they may kill him. The whole thing was satanically inspired and evil as it could be. And the devil was the tool that God had done, but all of it was in the plan of God. Yeah. See what I'm saying? So don't think we're saying God lost control of things here now. The devil is a tool or an instrument to do certain things. The wrath, he's come down having great wrath. I can tell you what I see in this verse. Hey, planet Earth, you wanted the devil in all that he was and all that he is. And you do, because you made your statement clear with a hatred, with a hostility that I see in people out here now against one thing that's good at all. Anything good, they'll not just say, well, I disagree with it. Oh, no, they're full of hostility and hatred. You can see the devil come out in them almost. And you know what? God's saying, I'm going to let you have that and all you want. You want that? I'm going to give it all to you. Here, take it. And the devil is cast down, and the Bible says, woe to the earth. Oh, woe be unto you, planet Earth. Woe be unto you, inhabitants of this planet. Woe be unto the human race. Why? Why? Because the devil is come down, and he's got great wrath. And the reason he's got great wrath, he knows he's got just a little bit of time left. And he ain't going to waste none of that time. He's going to wreck and ruin the creation of God. He hates the creation of God. He hates men and women created in the image of God because of that fact. And he will work overtime, not just to tempt them to stumble a little, but he'll try to bring them to a place where they're so deformed you can't even recognize them. Sin just takes its toll and just makes people, look at them walking down the street. You can see the effects of a sinful heart, a human that acts like an animal. So, we've got a pronouncement here. Now, with that, I got one last scripture I want to read, and then I'll get to my main point, what I'm wanting to done all of this to drive that. Look at chapter 9 of Revelation. We know that there were 6 seals that were loosed. We know under the 7th one there was silence in heaven. We know that after that 7 angels were given 7 trumpets, and they were begun to sound. And if you will read those trumpets, they are horrendous judgments upon this earth that's poured out upon it. Now, right here though, after there had been, I think, 4 of them, It says that an angel flies through the midst of heaven. Look at chapter 8, rather, at verse 13. I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, extreme grief and sorrow. Woe, extreme grief. Woe, multiplied, on top of, compounded, to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Each one of these angels, they're going to sound, and they're going to have a judgment, but there's a woe behind that. There's terrible grief that's coming to you, planet Earth. And the fifth angel sounded. I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out a smoke locusts upon the earth. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, nor any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared to battle, and on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. They had hair as the hair of women. Their teeth were as the teeth of lions. They had breastplates, as it were, breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. Now that was a lot of reading, but I sort of want to zero in on this thing. As I said, I stand ready to be corrected, and I don't even pretend to understand everything in the book of Revelation. But I've heard this preached on before. I've heard men teach on it, and I don't know how you feel, don't know how Brother Tom feels, and I'm not, Lord, I hope I don't cross that. I don't know what, we haven't talked about this, I don't think. But I've heard many teachers, and books have been written, that John saw things in the Spirit, and he saw modern day weaponry, and he just described it the best that he could, was what he described. He may have done that, but I have a little problem with it, and I'll tell you what it is. One guy got up and he said, I believe what John saw was Apache helicopters. Well, the problem with it, these things come out of a bottomless pit. I don't think Apache helicopters come out of bottomless pits. Number 2, it said when they hit you, they would drive you to a point of mental anguish where you really, really did want to die. Listen to me, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time when there are attempted suicides, that person really doesn't want to die. They're crying and screaming out for help, saying, I cannot take this and live like this no more. And they don't know what to do. And in anguish and desperation, they'll do something, and sometimes they get the job done. Well, these guys here are not playing around. They honestly, dying would be better than living with this. It gets to a point, these things inflict such mental anguish that they want to die. And I don't know a lot about Apache helicopters, but I think if one of them unleashed on you with one of their missiles and it struck you, I don't think you'd have no problem dying, because there wouldn't be anything left of you. Is that true, Ben? Do you know anything about Apache helicopters? I imagine. Do you think one of them could unleash on you a good one of them missiles and you'd just say, oh, that hurt. I wished I was dead. That hurt so bad. No, I think this is a picture in the Spirit. The other thing is, they got a king over them. And he's an angel or a messenger of the bottomless pit, And his name means destroyer. I think that, no, I got it reading it wrong here. The Greek tongue, well, I've read that somewhere else. At any rate, I think just a careful reading of that does not describe Apache helicopters turned loose on people, running them down. Can you see them running me and Brother Tom down? Go ahead, shoot me. You won't kill me, you'll just make my mental anguish worse. No, I think this is a whole host of demonic forces. Now, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, Ephesians 6 says, but there's principalities, there's powers, there's spiritual wickedness. There are demons and orders of demons, an organized kingdom out here with a chain of command, it appears to be, and that exists right now, and you and I contend with that. And it says we wrestle, which implies contact, very close contact. You come in contact with these things. You engage in struggle, physical struggle. It's up here in the mind most of the time, right up there. And it is a war that is unlike World War II or any other war could even think about. It is a war of titanic magnitude going on right there in the mind. And it's all brought on by these demons. And they do their fair share of wreaking havoc. Behind every broke home, you can well bet there was a devil behind it. By every drunk person with his scattered all over the highway and people killed, you can bet that thing was plotted out with devils and everything else behind it. Through every little child that's abused, these kids that they're finding. Listen, in my worstest days, in my worst times, I've done things I'm ashamed of. I'm desperately ashamed of, but at my worst, it wasn't not even a passing thought to want to have sex with a little kid. Never was. And if somebody had mentioned it, I'd have picked up something and tried to beat them half to death. But you've got big, wealthy, powerful men with big places and paradises where they bring teenagers and kids and do despicable things to them. You kidnap a baby or a child from its mom and dad and take it somewhere and sell it as a sex slave, and people do disgusting things. You can well bet that's not just some man that in his natural desire. There's devils behind that. The deception that we see in the church, there's devils behind that. The deception that we see in politics, all that rage that you see going on, the unreasonable statements, people getting on there who are in powerful places and they stand there like they somebody, well, I tell you why I see, and they talk so big, and they sound like a fool. You can well bet their minds have been blinded by the God of this world, and they are doing the bidding of the evil one. I guarantee that. That's right. But I got news for you. With all of that going on, it looks to me like at some point somewhere, there's some bad boys that's held in reserve that's going to make this look like a picnic. This world will become something your mind and mine could not imagine. Couldn't do it. Because somewhere something's going to happen and release this. Now, with that, I'm just going to present to you a possibility. I'm not saying it is absolutely the truth, but it's a possibility. I found something, I'd heard about it before and it never crossed my interest, but I found something before this week, and I listened to a lot of it and I read a lot of it. I'd heard other men mention it and I thought, fiddle on that. But it caught my interest. Now, this all ties together whether you want to believe it or not. How many of you have ever heard of CERN? CERN. How about the Hadron Collider? Okay. Let me tell you a little bit. I cannot begin to tell you all about this thing because it is so mind-blowing. In Switzerland, I believe it's the name of the organization or something, they call it CERN. They have an apparatus that is 17 miles long. A lot of it is underground. They show pictures of it. One big, huge machine devised by scientists. A group of men who are convinced God, they don't even regard God in the least. These men have, you can go on the internet and and look it up if you want. They claim that they are getting something called antimatter, that they are breaking into new dimensions, that they are going into and getting molecules and things we never knowed existed into a realm that is beyond this one, and reconstructing that stuff and trying to bring it back. And recently there was one fellow on there telling about where they got some of this matter, something for some kids in or some college or somebody in some institute to study, and said some of them went nuts and they went into all behavior, and others began to tell them they saw apparitions and different beings and everything from another world and all. You don't hear about that on the news too much. And one, I read a quote, now whether he made it or not, I don't know, but I read the quote that this real brilliant guy that was in a wheelchair, he died recently, what's his name, Hawking or something like, what? That he told them, you guys are going to open something up that's going to be destructive to the human race, that you can't get a lid put back on it. They are delving into things, according to these articles I read, and some, even one of the women, a big shot general director with it, and they sat and talked about the scientific possibilities. And folks, they are into stuff that would, and I, at first, when I first just heard of it, I thought, forevermore. But I'd have thought that way about a cell phone if you'd have told, or about men on the moon or anything else. If you'd have told me about it as a kid. When men did go on the moon in 1969, I said back, surely not. Then we watched it, now holy cow. And then these other inventions that they've come up with. Right now there are computer chips. Some countries are using them. Some factories in the United States are putting microchips in. You can look it up on the computer. It's all over it. They ain't even trying to hide it. And they can walk in and beep, they got access, and they go on, and they go buy their groceries, beep, that's it. They go on out the door and all like that. They claim it's the future, or whatever they call that, the wave of the future or something. Now, this machine, they told what all they're trying to do with it and everything, and they're wanting to open up a new dimension. Now, here is the clincher. You can see this. Out in front of it, there is that big Hindu god that's got 15 dozen arms and all like that. That's a big eye right outside of it. And that's called the god of destruction. What they're thinking about doing is destroying these certain things that have been molecules or particles or whatever like that. And they went into such stuff, I wish I could explain it to you, but I can't. I don't have the bit. I sit there and went, what? And they want to take this all apart, then reconstruct it in a way they want, so as to make things that we never thought possible to make, and grasp and grapple for immortality. Who needs God? I can live forever without Him. And they're opening up a realm. They're playing with something that's a lot bigger than them, I'll tell you that. Now, if mankind, if he's left to his own self, if in his imagination God had say anything he imagines he'll be able to do if I don't put a stop to it. If, as we read in the boy that was possessed, that there was some type of activity of man that opened up the doorway for this. If all of that be true, and if there is a time of coming when hell will literally materialize here on this earth, when what you're seeing out here now is nothing but a little picnic compared to what happens when the restraint is taken out of the way. When God now says, all right, and he stepped back, have at it. Could it be a possibility that what they are doing now, and we don't want to think it, we think it's preposterous, but could some human activity, something we're doing on our part, open the door for this to happen? A place where hell belches out such evil on this earth that men honestly try to die. The mental anguish is beyond. You can't keep yourself doped enough to get away from it. You're talking about depravity. People in their depravity, it just hits an all-time low and just keeps going lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. Man knows no stopping point. There's no end to the greed, the avarice, the hatred. Now, I don't know about you, but that causes me to raise an eyebrow that they now have a contraption, and scientists are delving into stuff with this thing that at one time thought impossible, and other scientists who are atheists are telling them, you guys need to shut this down. You are going to get into something bigger than you. And God only knows what it'll do to the human race if it gets out of control. You've been able to control some of these things. But if this gets out of control, it'll have a mind of its own and do what it wants. That's all on there. You can see it in various YouTube videos and articles and everything. You can read about it. And I just sat and I thought, could that be what we're looking at? Could revelation, could you see the making of it, the tool that will be used? Could that be it? I don't know. But when I think about the possibilities, and I see the degree of insanity, unsoundness, instability out in the world right now, when I see that it's you know, it used to be that to get people in church, it's simple. You want to get a crowd down here? We'll have a big dinner. We'll have 2 or 3 singing groups, and brother, they'll come pack the house out. You can't even get them to do that no more. You can have good singing groups. They won't come here. You can't get people interested in anything at all. We have reached an hour, folks, where this thing is possible. But oh, in the midst of all that darkness and evil that's predicted, when the God himself that created this world said there's coming a time where hell itself is unleashed in such magnitude that it'll boggle the mind, that men will look and wish they could die. There'll be no rest day or night. They'll lay down at night and wish it was morning. They'll get up in the morning and wish it was night. There'll be nothing but mental turmoil, and men will be like wild people wandering around in the desert with no water. In the midst of all of that, when evil gets so outright that there's no restraint to it. You see everything going on right now and nobody stops it. What happens if that is magnified and multiplied 100-fold? People so full of the devil that all they think about day and night is something despicable to do. That don't sound too good. But in the midst of it all, there was a man from Galilee. And he said these wonderful, blessed words. He said, let not your heart be troubled. What with all that? No, don't let that trouble you. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house, there's many mansions. If that wasn't so, I wouldn't tell you. And I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place, I absolutely will come and get you. I have the promise that some golden daybreak, Jesus is going to come. What did Jesus say? He said, when you see all these things taking place, don't you let that get you down. Don't you let that suck you in. Don't you let that perplex you or get your eyes off of Jesus Christ. Don't you entertain doubts. Don't you entertain thoughts that are negative, that draws you away from this, that causes you to lean on the arm of flesh. The arm of flesh will fail you every time. But lean on the everlasting arms that will not fail you. Listen, I don't know about the timing of the rapture and all that when it comes to all of that, but I'm going to tell you this. There's none of them that will be so strong that the blood of Jesus Christ can't conquer it. The Spirit of God says when the enemy comes in like a flood, I'll raise up a standard. I'll lift up a wall. And you know what? I'll lift up such a wall that he can conjure up that and 1,000 more like it, and I'll laugh about it. In the book of Psalm, God said, I look on the activities of man, their great plans and their devices and all they're planning to do, and they're doing some big things in their eyes, and God says, I laugh at them. I laugh. God not just, he sat down there and said, oh, for pity's sakes. And that same God said, my children, don't let your heart be dominated by fear. Don't let doubts and fears enter. Don't let the reality of these facts as you see them with your own eyes. Don't let that cause your heart to be filled with fear and wonder. Don't let that take your eyes off of the lowly man from Galilee. But you cast your gaze upon him who is the author and the finisher of our faith. Cast your eyes upon him who bled on Calvary, who conquered the devil world. Cast your eyes upon him who rose. Death couldn't hold him. They might kill me. Let them kill me. What was it he said? Don't you fear him that's able to kill your body but not the soul? Let them kill your body. They can't touch your soul. They can't do nothing. Harmless and helpless, little kitty cats. But no, let your heart be anchored in Christ. Let your faith be solidly found. And listen, Brother Tom, the older I get, I'm not as old as you, but the older I get, there's times that I'm plagued with the thought, what are you going to do? How are you going to make it when you can't drive a school? How are you going to do? And you know what? Upon life's boundless ocean where mighty billows roll, I fixed my hope in Jesus, blessed anchor of my soul. When I see the scientists making their brags and they're tampering with something that could be a Pandora's box, I'm not going to worry. Or the others doing things that's destroying the climate. Let them destroy the climate. I'm not going to go home and lose one wink of sleep about that. I've anchored in Jesus. I fear no wind or wave. I've anchored in Jesus, for he has power to save. He can lift us up out of all that mess and laugh in the face of all the insanity, and we can be kept right in the midst of it or out of it, one of the two. I personally believe some of these days he'll just say, that's enough. And we'll be caught up to meet him in clouds of glory, safe in the arms of Jesus and all the holy angels. So don't let these things fear you. It's coming. You can well bet it's coming. But don't let that cause you to be fearful, because it doesn't affect the promises of God. Hear me now. All that the devil is doing, all the evil workings we see in our politicians, all the destructive forces that are sitting there, and they are a threat to our freedom and our liberty. There is not any need to let that fill your heart for 1 minute with the least little bit of fear. Why? Because if God be for me, who is it that can be against me? Amen. Who is it? Let me see that fella. Well, I sure hope they don't get control of Congress, and I hope they don't either. But if they do, if you think I'm going to fall apart, you're wrong. If they get control of everything and pass the ungodliest laws and make it legal